Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? And I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.
It's time for the Sports Blitz, the only live-streamed local sports show in Arkansas, with all the latest on the sports stories that matter to you. Live from the Lions Den Golf Club studio, here are your hosts, Mark Freeman and Weldon Braxton.
What a finish to the Arkansas-Kentucky game last night. I don't know if you're a little tired like I am, Dragon, from watching that game late last night. And if you're as upset as I was, or if you were as upset as I was, as Arkansas tried to choke it away a couple different times, but Arkansas gets the win over Kentucky in dramatic fashion. We've got, real quickly, I want to play something for you. This is Chuck Barrett on the call last night.
Go. Qualls could extend the lead to 3. Free throw is on the way, and it's good. 85-82 Arkansas. Chance to win it here. Shot clock's off. Kentucky's got it. Harrison across the timeline. 22 seconds. Harrison, right side, gives way to Young. Young, crossover dribble, top of the key. Three-pointer, no good. Poitras goes over Portis's back. No call. Back out front. Young for 3, and it's good with 10.2 seconds to go. Tied at 85. Hogs don't have a timeout. 5 seconds to go. Madden, right side. Three-pointer on the way. No good. Qualls with the dunk at the buzzer. It goes and Arkansas wins. It goes and Arkansas wins. Qualls with a two-hand finish. Arkansas wins the ball game. They're going to check the replay, but it's going to
What a finish for Arkansas as Michael Qualls, man, just climbed the stairs.
Big
and
time.
He dunks the miss back at the buzzer to win the game. And Arkansas fans go from here to, we were not quite here, but somewhere in the middle. Well, I lied. We jumped through the sea. Most of us were waking up our wives screaming. I screamed like a little girl last night when that shot went in. I said, oh, real loud. And then I was like, oh, wife's asleep in the other room, and I don't want to wake her up. But the Hogs, now I want to talk about the win, but now it makes me think, and I'm sort of a pessimist sometimes, but it makes me think about what could have been if Arkansas had beaten Florida, taken care of business like that. And then, if you had taken care of Florida, you're 2-1 in the SEC, but what about that A&M clunker, man? If you just played it all, you got a chance to have done something there in the SEC. So it changes perspective on everything. Arkansas is going to end up 0-5 in the SEC too. Man, what could have been with one dunk?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Give Michael Qualls credit, first of all, for his awareness level. We talk about fundamentals all the time, and it gets boring, but that's what happens when you don't block out. And give Michael Qualls credit for taking advantage of it. He throws it back down in time. Obviously, there was time on the clock after the play. And you're right, Mark, it does get you to thinking about things outside of this Kentucky game. You look back the way you did at the Florida game. That was a huge opportunity. The Texas A&M game. And look, the Texas A&M game, to me, what's tough about that one is because I think we can all agree, maybe some people have Arkansas comfortably in the tournament. I think most of us would agree that best case scenario, Arkansas is a bubble team come Selection Sunday, right? When you're a bubble team, your losses become almost as huge as your big wins, because the committee will then look at, how many bad losses do they have? Now, to that point, Texas A&M did knock off a Tennessee team that we thought was in the top quarter of the SEC, one of the best teams in the league. Texas A&M did knock them off, so that win may not look as bad as we had thought once Arkansas had lost, but this Georgia game coming up is huge. I don't want to diminish the Kentucky game because obviously you beat a top 15 team with the caliber of players that Kentucky has. It's a big deal. But at the same time, if you want to go anywhere and you really want to be an NCAA tournament team, you got to win road games like at Georgia because, look, we don't have to go far back in time, in history. Last year, Arkansas, huge win against Kentucky. I know Kentucky wasn't this good, but still a huge win over Kentucky. You beat number 2 Florida. You beat Missouri. You had a pretty good collection of wins on your home floor, but you couldn't do anything outside of beating Auburn on the road, and therefore you were on the outside looking in when it comes to tournament time. If you're an Arkansas fan, what you don't want to see is Arkansas continue to beat these big-time opponents on your home floor, but you can't back it up with road wins and you get left out of the tournament. That's why we have a saying in football, the most important play is this play. And the most important game for Arkansas, especially the players, the fans can enjoy the Kentucky game, but for the players, the most important game right now is the Georgia game. Don't let a Kentucky hangover allow you to put up a stinker on the road against Georgia. You really need this game.
I don't want to get the cart before the horse, but we'll talk a little bit about that Georgia game here in a little bit. I do feel like it's a classic hangover game when you go on the road after beating a big Kentucky team and 13th ranked in the country, and you lay an egg, and that just seems like what Arkansas has done for the past decade or two. We'll have to really get past some past demons, and really even demons from this year on the road, as they lost their first true road game at Texas A&M. We'll talk a little more Arkansas basketball after a while. You got Michael Qualls' big finish to the game. Bobby Portis ended up with a double-double, was getting manhandled pretty good by Julius Randle at the end of that game, but pretty much everybody gets manhandled by Julius Randle, and he put up a good fight. Kai Madden played very well. I know he missed that last shot, but I was excited with what I saw from him, just being a guy who didn't care to take the big shot. Right. He wanted it. So I respect that. We'll talk Hogs later on. We've got lots of Arkansas Razorback news today as the defensive coordinator. Since the last time we've been on the show, Chris Ash has decided to go to Ohio State. Co-defensive coordinator news has come about that he would be the decision-making agent there at Ohio State. Can't necessarily blame him, as Ohio State's a ready-made situation in Arkansas. It was going to be some work. It was going to be some rebuilding and a lot more work on his end. So if he wants to be a head coach at some day, Ohio State, sort of as bad as it sounds and as much as we hate it around here, Arkansas is not as good a job as Ohio State.
Oh, there's no question about it. I mean, you just got to call it what it is. Ohio State defensive coordinator job, that's a much better springboard into becoming a head coach than the Arkansas defensive coordinator position is right now. Obviously, if you're an Arkansas fan, you hope that changes in the next couple of years, but I mean, you look at some of the coordinators that have been through there. You look at a Paul Haynes, who is now a head coach, and we saw what he did at Arkansas. And I think to say we were less than impressed would be an understatement. But those Ohio State ties were able to help him get a head coaching job. But Mark, the discussion and the conversation around the state yesterday is about a bigger issue, or whether or not there is a bigger issue. Did Chris Ash leave because something was rotten within the program? Did he leave because, he didn't really foresee Brett Bielema being able to get this thing turned around? Is his leaving? Yes, Ohio State's a better job, but the question mark has been put out there. Was part of this an indictment of the Arkansas program, not only now, but moving forward? Because the point's been made. If you're Chris Ash and you have another less than stellar defensive season, all of a sudden you go from being an Ohio State defensive coordinator candidate to being on the hot seat at Arkansas, which is a huge jump, and it can happen within a year's time. So I think a lot of us look at this move today, Mark, and we want to know, is it a reflection of some sort of the Razorback program and where it's going moving forward?
I'll just keep my opinion on his decision to myself because, I mean, it's an easy decision if you look at it from the outside. You've got these two, you take the names off and you look at numbers and recruiting rankings and stuff like that. It's, if you want to be a head coach one day, going to Ohio State is a better job. And right now, like you said, it's just like the nicest way that I can say it is that he wasn't up for the challenge at Arkansas. Okay, well, I'll just go over here. Well, they've got a top 10 recruiting class. Yeah. They've been a power in the conference where I'm not going to have to start from scratch. I mean, he may get more respect from the coaching community for if he were to do something here at Arkansas.
Sure.
But he's going to get more this in the long run. They're going to win. They're going to recruit well. He's got a setup at Ohio State, and then it's a stepping stone to a future job. Really, to be honest, if he's going to leave in a couple of years, I'd rather him just leave now. And Arkansas can go on. Yeah, rather than leaving Arkansas in a bad spot when they're supposed to be good. Nobody expects them to be very good next year anyway. So we'll talk a little later about the about the candidates.
Yeah,
A
the
lot of people are
replacement.
clamoring for Randy Shannon, Arkansas's current linebackers coach, to be the new defensive coordinator. And then, as is always the case, you've got pie in the sky. Well, I think Butch Davis is going to come be the defensive coordinator, and he's going to be co-coordinators with just every name in the book, throwing them out there. Yeah, Ed Orgeron's going to be the other. He's going to be in the co, and they're going to take. It's just not going to happen that way.
We're going to talk about this. I do want to say this to that point, Mark. Randy Shannon, Ed Orgeron. Well, I understand recruiting is huge. Arkansas, we know one their primary issue is they're devoid of talent. So anything you can do to help that situation, you want to do. But let's remember the defensive coordinator's job is first and foremost to coordinate the defense, which means you want to make sure you get somebody who is best suited to coordinate the defense. Not saying Randy Shannon can't coach defense, not saying Ed Orgeron can't coach defense, but please keep in mind, you want somebody who can bring in recruits, absolutely, but make sure they can coordinate defense.
Brett Bielema is a defensive coach, so at the end of the day, I don't know what his thumbprint on the defensive staff and game plan is, but I know that he had a defensive coordinator in the booth last year, and he was on the field.
Yeah.
So it seemed to be a pretty heavy influence. I know he likes to be a CEO type guy who let his coaches coach, but it seems like he's going to have his thumbprint on this team. And as a defensive guy, I'm more worried about an offensive philosophy. Of course, I like to see some points scored. I'd really love to see a good defense, but I am looking more at, like Weldon said, finding somebody who's a good fit for the job. We'll talk about the names.
Yeah, and to that point, Mark, that's why don't be surprised if it's not a big name because of Brett Bielema's thumbprint. I think that's sort of an indicator if you may not get a big name because Brett Bielema likes that influence.
We'll see, and that may be the determining factor whether or not. I mean, if you look at a name, you see who he brings in. If it's a huge name guy, well, that tells me he's going to take his hands off, like you were saying.
Right.
And if it's a guy you've never heard of, chances are it's somebody who would fit in with his philosophy and would do what Brett Bielema asks him to do. And it's not so much of a CEO type. It's more of a this is how it's going to, Bobby Petrino type. This is how it's going to be on the defensive side of the ball. So we'll see how that goes. You're watching the Sports Blitz on RiverValleyLeader.com. We haven't even introduced ourselves. Mark Freeman, Weldon Braxton, Matty Lassiter. He's the one who played that awesome audio there. He's our producer. We appreciate you joining us today. Not only did the Hogs have a good win last night in basketball, we had some area teams who played very well across the state. Russellville Cyclones, 2 straight buzzer beater wins in conference play to start the season off. And, they're all playing sort of with heavy hearts right now as Coach Cody Mann's father in the hospital in a rough situation right now. But they go out against Conway, hit a buzzer beater to win 55-53. And then last night, they get Fort Smith Northside at home. And you ought to go to Cyclone Nation on Facebook. Go search at the top, Cyclone Nation, and look at some of the pictures. Watch the video of Tony Jones hitting a buzzer beater 3 to beat Fort Smith Northside. That's no slouch. Now, Conway was good, but Northside, I've seen them play live, and they are good this year. So the Russellville Cyclones starting 7A, 6A Central action with 2 buzzer beater wins. They couldn't be happier.
Yeah, big win against Northside. Congratulations to the Cyclones. And Northside's a team with length, with some athleticism. I've seen them play. You look at this game from a matchup standpoint, you wonder how Russellville would deal with some of that length and athleticism. But give them credit for hanging in there. It was a tight game, and Tony Jones came up big. And so Russellville, a couple of huge conference wins. I mean, you beat Conway on the road in a hostile environment. You come back home, then you're able to beat Northside. We'll see what kind of momentum they get together. Challenging games coming up. You talk about road games at Parkview and at Hall, so those games won't be easy, but it's good to go into those games with some momentum, and that's what they have at 2-0.
They are 2-0 in the 7A, 6A Central, as we mentioned. Now 2-0 in the 5A West is the Clarksville Panthers, 70-40 win over Greenbrier last night. It's a Greenbrier team that's going to be improved, but it's just tough when you go up against some of the athletes who can run up and down all day like Clarksville does. They just coasted to the win. My boy Bailey Patton got a dunk last night.
Okay.
Bailey Patton is a 6'2" white man, so power to my people getting a dunk there last night. Only problem was he walked and it didn't count.
Oh, well, hey.
Oh gosh, I got to give him trouble today about that because he said he got a breakaway and he said I just forgot to dribble it.
Oh.
He said I got a dunk tonight. I was like, oh really? He said yeah. It was. I said was it nice? He goes yeah, it was pretty nice, but I walked. He told me that it didn't count because he forgot to dribble. So congratulations on your dunk, Bailey. But the Panthers win 70-40.
Yeah, blowout win for Clarksville. Coach Davis told us when he was on the show with us last that Greenbrier would be a team to look out for, and they still may be. It's just, just because, you get blown out by a team like Clarksville doesn't mean you can't play at all. So, Greenbrier will be a team probably second time around. They'll be a little bit better, but, Clarksville, they're cruising along through the 5A West. The Harrison game's coming up here in about more than a week or so that will be one you tune in for. And they're rolling right now. They're undefeated in 5A West play. Seems like the last few years we've talked about their schedule and how they schedule well outside of their league in order to prepare for conference play. And so far it's paying off.
It definitely is. They've got Shiloh Christian Friday night at home at Pantherland. Coach Davis calling for a whiteout. He likes to do that come conference slate and ask his fans to wear a certain color. This color is white, or this Friday is white. They're playing Shiloh Christian. They've got a tough schedule ahead in the 5A West. They went undefeated last year, and the year before they've won 38 conference games in a row at Clarksville. So it's a big deal for those guys to continue their streak. Another team trying to get back on the right track, the Pottsville Apaches. Now, Monday night they beat Mena, or I guess it's Friday night. They beat Mena 59-40, and last night they beat Dardanelle 61-46. 18 points from Travis Cole, 17 from Michael Perry, and the Apaches back to even in the conference. They lost their first two games on the road at Subi and at Maumelle, and then they go to Mena and win, and go to Dardanelle and win. So they're 2-2 in conference. They've got a lot of road games out of the way, and it looks like the back half of the schedule is going to be pretty home-friendly to the Apaches.
That's going to be good for them, Mark. And Pottsville's a team. They're coming. We've said it all year long. They've got a lot of scoring to replace. Michael Perry leading the way. But they're coming right now. I think they're a team that's going to be playing better as time goes on. They've got some winnable league games coming up. I mean, not trying to diss anybody, but they got some games that are winnable coming up. And I think in the end, by the time they get back to a Subiaco, by the time they get around back to a Maumelle, they'll be much more ready to play.
I think that those games against Maumelle and Subiaco are going to be huge. They've got a lot of big games between the two. Subiaco and Maumelle both, they've played one another already once, and Maumelle won at Subiaco. So I feel like Subiaco could just as easily win at Maumelle, and then if Pottsville can beat those two both at home, they're right there.
Right.
If those two teams lose to one other team in the conference, the only problem is there's a pretty big divide between the top three and the rest in the 4A4. I thought Waldron was going to be a little better. They got beat by 30 by Maumelle last night on the road. So I think it's just pretty much those three teams atop the conference, and they're going to fight it out. At the end of the day, though, you go into the district tournament, and they all play one another again, seed each other out for the regional, and then you go to the regional, and Gravitt's pretty decent. Lincoln, all right. Prairie Grove, all right. I think Gravitt beat Pottsville already once. So, but I think top to bottom, those three teams in the 4A4 are better than the 1-4A. So
right.
You're gonna last year it was all four teams from the 4A4 that made the state tournament. So it's just the way it went, and it looks like the 4A4 is going to fare pretty well. We don't know 4 games into the conference slate, but it looks like the 4A4 is going to be a tough one with those top three teams.
Yeah, those teams are solid, and I agree with you, Mark. I think the 4A4 teams are a little bit better than the teams in the 1-4A, so that'll be an advantage when you talk about getting teams into the state tournament.
Well, we're going to look at the NFL playoffs as we've got the AFC and NFC championship games. We didn't talk a whole lot about them on Monday because we were saving them for today, but we've got that. We've got the Hogs basketball game. We got to talk a little bit more about that, and then the defensive coordinator position. Plenty of stuff on the Sports Blitz, so stay with us.
Over 69 years of treating you like family, Peters Family Living's main goal is customer service. That is their promise to their customers. They offer in-house financing on furniture and appliances and a 30-day money-back guarantee. For a friendly, no-pressure atmosphere, visit Peters Family Living today at 201 North Arkansas Avenue, Russellville. Online at petersfamilyliving.com or call 479-968-2929.
Today, there are more than 20 brands of cars being sold in America. So to be noticed, Ford and Cogswell Motors have to go further than anyone thought we could. How does Ford stand out above the crowd? Not just with plug-in vehicles like the new 2013 Ford Fusion Energy that gets a projected 100 miles per gallon equivalent, but also with a line of gas vehicles equipped with the innovative EcoBoost engines combining power and efficiency, plus a full measure of technologically advanced features. We invite you to stop into Cogswell Motors today. We go further than anyone thought we could, so that you can go further too.
RiverValleyLeader.com is the #1 local source for instant news in the River Valley, offering HD video and live streaming along with top-notch coverage of all the news and events around the area. The River Valley Leader is the only place to go for all the information you need. Check out the newest local business featured on the site, as well as police news and coverage from important meetings, along with the personal stories, all at one convenient click. Check out RiverValleyLeader.com.
If you didn't count on KARK4 today this morning,
here's what you missed.
Updated news.
Police continue searching for suspects after a home intrusion overnight.
Developing stories.
There's another piece of presidential history turning up here in Arkansas.
And weather and traffic on the force.
Friday night, Saturday morning will bring us our next chance of rain.
Every 10 minutes.
Around the clock.
Making your day easier.
So rise and shine and count on.
Count on.
Count on. KRK4 today.
Hi folks, Richard Roberts with Cogswell Motors in Russellville. You know, we've been in business since 1949. A dealership doesn't stay in business that long under the same ownership unless you're doing something right, and that's taking care of customers. We have the largest selection of new Ford, Lincoln, Mazda, and pre-owned vehicles in the River Valley. So if you want the most for your trade, the best interest rate on financing, and the best price on a new or pre-owned automobile, come to Russellville and see us. We're at 1900 East Main, or visit us on the web at cogswellmotors.com.
Got a lot of news and notes today on the Sports Blitz. Thank you for taking time to join us today at RiverValleyLeader.com, whether you're watching the live stream or whether you are watching the replay. We thank you for your time. 968 News, 968-6397 is the number if you want to call in and give us your thoughts on any of the things that we've got to talk about today. Sometimes we like to try to go in order, but if you call and you've got an idea of something else you want us to talk about, you're welcome to do that, and we'd appreciate to hear from you today. Mark Freeman, Weldon Braxton, Maddie Lassiter inside the Cogswell Motors studios. Looks like the Minnesota Vikings are going to hire Cincinnati Bengals defensive coordinator Mike Zimmer as their head coach. I guess it was yesterday. Jim Caldwell was hired by the Detroit Lions, and there's another one, Ken Wisenhunt by the Tennessee Titans. Since last we were on the air, so the NFL coaching carousel has sort of come to a close. Is there one more?
Cleveland
is the only one left, I guess. I was trying to think. I thought that they might have all been gone now, but it looks like these coaching vacancies have been filled for the most part. Any of these hires jump out to you as something you like or don't like?
They're not bad hires. I think you go down the list, you look at a Ken Wisenhunt, what he was able to do as far as reviving Phillip Rivers' career. I think that's what stood out to most people. You know, look at his time in Arizona. He did take a team to the Super Bowl. Although Kurt Warner is credited with that for the most part. I think he's got to make a decision on Jake Locker, and if he does like Jake Locker, he has to get him to fit in his system, which I think will be a challenge because Wisenhunt, he's a timing and accuracy kind of guy. Jake Locker's more of an athletic, deep ball type guy. So we'll see how that goes. The Lions, Jim Caldwell. This is the thing with the Detroit job is I thought it was the most attractive job of the whole offseason. Took a little bit long to fill. They go with Caldwell. We know he's taking a team to the Super Bowl, although Peyton Manning gets most of the credit for that. He's the one guy who was really excited about working with Matthew Stafford. It's been well documented how he charted all Stafford's plays and talked about ways he could help Matt Stafford play. And I think if you're Detroit, that has to really impress you, because I look at Matt Stafford, if I'm the Lions, I feel like I have a guy who's a top 5 talent but plays more like a top 15-ish quarterback, and that's a problem. I need him playing more up to his capability. And then Mike Zimmer with the Minnesota Vikings, I think this is a good hire. Coordinators don't always translate well to head coaches. Some do, some don't. I like Mike Zimmer. I think if you're a Cowboys fan, you remember him in Dallas. I actually liked his defenses. He's one of the more aggressive coordinators in the NFL. Now, his philosophy football-wise doesn't mean he's going to be a good or bad head coach. We'll have to see. But overall, I don't think that's a bad hire.
Both coordinators, the Cincinnati Bengals, going on to head coaching jobs. It tells you a little something about the fact that they've lost in the playoffs the last 3 years in the first round. If both of their coaches are that good, what's going on with Marvin Lewis and that team not being able to get it done? Maybe it's Andy Dalton's fault. Who knows? Speaking of individual players, we need to call out. There's a guy like Chris Johnson in Tennessee. This is my thoughts on Ken Wisenhunt, who said a couple weeks ago that he felt like the Titans were wasting his prime. He said basically, they're misusing me. I'm not getting the ball in situations I can be successful. Every time I've watched the Titans, though, it seems like he's getting hit in the backfield before he even has a chance to make a play. So I do kind of understand where he's coming from with that. Ken Wisenhunt has been very good in the passing game.
Right.
But this year, the San Diego Chargers did look pretty good running the ball down the stretch. I think he's going to be able to take advantage of Chris Johnson. It depends on if Jake Locker can stay healthy, if he's the guy, and if they might go through the draft and find one more wide receiver, or through free agency or whatever, however they might go about that. But Ken Wisenhunt, I think, can be a pretty decent coach there in Tennessee.
Yeah.
And then the Lions, like you mentioned, getting Jim Caldwell there. If he can calm down Matt Stafford, who is, just stop making so many stupid decisions. Stop just throwing it as far as you can, Johnny Manziel style, toward Calvin Johnson, because as good as he is, it doesn't always work that you just throw it as far as you want and he goes and gets it. And it does work a lot. And Calvin Johnson has been very, very good throughout his career, and Matt Stafford made him look pretty good. But I think Jim Caldwell, I know that the way it ended in Indianapolis wasn't all that great.
Right.
And a lot of that had to do with injuries, and a lot of that had to do with turnover there on the defense, and really the Peyton Manning.
Yeah, that's the injury there.
That's the injury that we can refer to. But I think Jim Caldwell can be a calming force on Matt Stafford and can have an impact positively on him. The Lions, man, they've got all the talent in the world, offensively and defensively. I saw a stat the other day. They had the most feared offensive and defensive player in the NFL, according to players, in Ndamukong Suh, which I think the reason they fear him is because they're afraid that they'll be on the ground, he'll step on their neck or like rip their throat out or something just terrible.
Right.
And then Calvin Johnson, he's just feared because he's a freak.
Yeah, I mean he's a big time player, and you look at we talk about Stafford, and Stafford's a guy, as I said earlier. I think he's a top 5 talent. I think he's a hugely gifted quarterback. He's just so undisciplined. I think that goes back to Jim Schwartz. I think Jim Schwartz is a talented coach, but he's sort of a renegade, and he's sort of a guy who doesn't cultivate a disciplinary type atmosphere, and ultimately that's why they got so many silly personal foul penalties. I think that's why his quarterback just went out there and played wild and threw the ball around. So if Caldwell can get that together, I think it'll help. Ken Wisenhunt in Tennessee, I agree. I think he will use Chris Johnson a little bit more, use him more in the passing game. I think the Tennessee philosophy has kind of been, pound it with Chris Johnson, try to use him like he's a 225-pound back. He's not quite that guy. I expect his speed and athleticism to be used a little more. So, and we'll see how these hires go. The Cleveland Browns right now, they look pathetic. They fired their coach less than a calendar year after they hired him, and right now they're searching for a coach. I hear they're talking to Greg Schiano. They're just looking at all the number of candidates. They don't have a clue.
No, that's exactly right. Haslam in Cleveland, no clue. You wonder why teams suck for 20 years. This is why.
I'd rather have Udonis Haslam running my team right at this point. I mean,
oh Lord, I'm just not a big fan of the way that organization's being run. And if I were a quality head coaching candidate, I'm not sure. That's why they're in this situation. They can't get a guy who's a great candidate to end up there. If you've got options on the table, or I mean, pretty much anything aside from Cleveland. I'd take that. So they're going to be in trouble until somebody gets lucky and coaches them well for a couple of years, and then maybe they can, or at least a year, and can keep their job for more than 1 year. But they're in trouble there in Cleveland. So we'll see how that coaching search goes. We've got NFC AFC championship game breakdown right after this break. I'm sorry that I teased it and we didn't quite get to it, but those coaching search carousel things sort of took over. San Francisco, Seattle, Denver, New England right after the break.
Over 69 years of treating you like family, Peters Family Living's main goal is customer service. That is their promise to their customers. They offer in-house financing on furniture and appliances and a 30-day money-back guarantee. For a friendly, no-pressure atmosphere, visit Peters Family Living today at 201 North Arkansas Avenue, Russellville. Online at petersfamilyliving.com or call 479-968-2929.
Today, there are more than 20 brands of cars being sold in America. So to be noticed, Ford and Cogswell Motors have to go further than anyone thought we could. How does Ford stand out above the crowd? Not just with plug-in vehicles like the new 2013 Ford Fusion Energy that gets a projected 100 miles per gallon equivalent, but also with a line of gas vehicles equipped with the innovative EcoBoost engines combining power and efficiency, plus a full measure of technologically advanced features. We invite you to stop into Cogswell Motors today. We go further than anyone thought we could, so that you can go further too.
RiverValleyLeader.com is the #1 local source for instant news in the River Valley, offering HD video and live streaming along with top-notch coverage of all the news and events around the area. The River Valley Leader is the only place to go for all the information you need. Check out the newest local business featured on the site, as well as police news and coverage from important meetings, along with the personal stories, all at one convenient click. Check out RiverValleyLeader.com.
If you didn't count on KARK4 today this morning,
Here's what you missed.
updated news,
Police continue searching for suspects after a home intrusion overnight.
developing stories,
There's another piece of presidential history turning up here in Arkansas.
and weather and traffic on the force.
Friday night, Saturday morning will bring us our next chance rain.
Every 10 minutes.
Around the clock.
Making your day easier.
So rise and shine and count on.
Count on.
Count on KRK4 today.
Hi folks, Richard Roberts with Cogswell Motors in Russellville. You know, we've been in business since 1949. A dealership doesn't stay in business that long under the same ownership unless you're doing something right, and that's taking care of customers. We have the largest selection of new Ford, Lincoln, Mazda, and pre-owned vehicles in the River Valley. So if you want the most for your trade, the best interest rate on financing, and the best price on a new or pre-owned automobile, come to Russellville and see us. We're at 1900 East Main, or visit us on the web at cogswellmotors.com.
8 straight wins for the San Francisco 49ers heading into Seattle, place that got blitzed earlier this year for the NFC Championship game. And then we look at the other side, Denver Broncos hosting the New England Patriots in a Manning versus Brady showdown for the ages. Probably, I say probably, could be the last one of this importance, maybe ever. We're looking at history here this weekend. Welcome back into the Sports Blitz on a Wednesday. Weldon Braxton, Matty Laster, I'm Mark Freeman here in the Cogswell Motors studios. Weldon, man, this is the game we've been looking forward to. The games, these are the games
Right.
we've been looking forward to for the entire season. And to get these 4 teams, like we mentioned on Monday, is such a big deal because these were the 4 best teams, according to us, coming into the playoffs.
And Vegas, these are the top 4 as far as Super Bowl odds going into the season. And Mark, look at these games, and we'll start in NFC. That's cool?
It's good with me.
Because that's the matchup that really has me intrigued. I think it's the easiest one for us to talk about in terms of diagnosing how things may go, or at least what needs to happen. Because with Belichick and Brady and Peyton, you don't know how they're going to attack. I look at this NFC game, and I'm thinking right now, if I'm the San Francisco 49ers, I'm really emphasizing what we're doing defensively. I'm emphasizing what we're doing on special teams, and here's why, or offensively as well, all 3 facets. Because if I'm San Francisco, I look at Seattle and I think if I can make Russell Wilson and that offense drive the ball 80 yards every single possession, they can't score on me. That's the mentality I have. That's why special teams, I got to make sure my kick coverage is right. I can't allow any big returns. I have to make sure that I don't fumble any snaps or anything on special teams. Offensively, I got to make sure we take care of the ball, don't turn it over. I wouldn't be surprised to see a somewhat conservative game plan from San Francisco. Not saying they're not trying to score, but I really believe that San Francisco defense, if they don't have to defend a short field, if you make Seattle drive the ball 80-plus yards every single possession, they won't score on San Francisco. The only problem will be is if you give Russell Wilson a short field on a turnover or something like that, help out that struggling offense, then you could be in trouble. But I think if you're San Francisco, you make Seattle drive the length of the football field, I think you're in good shape. I think that'll be the determining factor, field position.
You're probably in a game like this, field position turnovers, big deal. Whether or not they get set up with, first and goal first and 10 from the 20 after a turnover, a fumble or an interception or whatever it would be. That you're very, very right on that. I think a couple things would help Seattle. Now I know they're at home, so that's a huge advantage in my opinion, because that field has just, it's causing earthquakes. How loud they get, and it's not hurricanes, it's earthquakes.
There you go.
It's first time in a month I've said it right. But there's a couple things that I think Marshawn Lynch is a beast. Beast mode for a reason. He's a freak, and San Francisco is rightly going to focus on him. Percy Harvin, his health. Will he or won't he be able to play and play well? Because he adds a dynamic that Seattle's receivers just aren't that great. You got a guy like Golden Tate. He's all right. Percy Harvin, though, he can be a guy. You saw him run the fly sweep once last week. He loosens things up for Marshawn Lynch. He's the lightning to Marshawn Lynch's thunder as far as just spread them out, and then Marshawn will pound them. And then he had 3 catches on 4 targets before he was hurt, and he was just a guy who he can soften up the defense. And I know San Francisco's defense is really good, so I expect it to be a much closer game. The last game, San Francisco obviously won at home. But at Seattle, it was a bunch of turnovers, and it was poor offensive play by San Francisco that led to Seattle winning. But then on the flip side, the weapons that San Francisco, 8 wins in a row, it's not by accident. The weapons that they've cultivated throughout the season, maybe the injuries and the things that they had to go through and endure have helped them to become stronger because, not having Crabtree for so long and having all the offensive injuries that they had, especially at the wide receiver position. They lean on Anquan Bolden, and he and Colin Kaepernick get a little bit of a rapport there. Vernon Davis still as good as he ever was, and Frank Gore rounding into shape right now and playing very well. Maybe that offense needed to go through some of the stuff that it went through, as bizarre as that sounds, to get them to a place to where they could succeed in the playoffs. Going to Seattle, though, man, it's going to be tough to do. I'm going to wait till Friday to make a prediction, but as much as I was leaning towards San Francisco, the more I thought about this game being in Seattle on Sunday night or Sunday evening, it's going to be tough.
It's going to be a really tough game, Mark, for San Francisco, and it's going to be 2 good football teams playing. You don't get to the NFC Championship game and you not be a team that can play. I look at this game, and there are some concerns for San Francisco. Frank Gore, he's a workhorse, but I also worry about this time of year and his age and being grinded on a little bit. I think that could be a concern. Seattle or San Francisco, particularly a guy like Vernon Davis. Vernon Davis is going to have to toughen up a little bit because you're going to face some defensive backs and some linebackers that are going to be very physical with you. They're going to make no apologies about it whatsoever. The San Francisco pass catchers have got to be tough. They got Michael Crabtree's shown he can make tough catches. You got to make some tough catches against these guys. Yeah, Greg Roman, Jim Harbaugh, they can design things to get people open, but at some point, Kaepernick is going to have to make the throw, and these guys are going to make the catch in order to be successful. One reason right now I'm leaning San Francisco is just because I think they're playing better football right now with all things being equal. The problem is all things aren't equal. That's what CenturyLink Field can do, and that's why it's going to be a good game.
You're right. If you look at the two teams and how they're playing right now, you would take San Francisco. But like you said, great equalizer is the place that you're playing. And selfishly, I'm going to root for Denver in the AFC. I'm going to root for San Francisco in the NFC. Partially because the way the defensive backs play for Seattle, I'm rooting for Denver to win the Super Bowl. The way the defensive backs play for Seattle, I don't know that Denver's going to be able to do a whole lot in the passing game with the way that they're going to get after him physically. And so I'm rooting for San Francisco because I think it'd be a fun, high-scoring-ish game. I mean, if San Francisco has its way, it won't be. They'll just shut them down.
Right.
And Denver won't be able to score. But it would be a more fun game, in my opinion, to watch. The two teams that I preferred to start this season, aside from Dallas, obviously, who I'd rather have in it, but that's never going to happen. Playing in the Super Bowl, Seattle, I don't like them, but I definitely respect what I've come to see from the Seattle Seahawks this year. Let's move to the AFC. Denver, New England. What a game. I mean, just say it. Say it out loud. Denver, New England, Peyton Manning, Tom Brady. It's just going to be an incredible football atmosphere there at Mile High. If it weren't in Denver, I would be worried that the New England Patriots would come in and would win the game just somehow, some way. It just seems to happen that way. And I hate the Patriots, by the way. It seems like they're the luckiest team ever, and I know it's because of preparation, coaching, Tom Brady, Bill Belichick. But it just seems like, going back even to 2001, the fact that they, Vinatieri to kick a field goal and win the game, it's like, man, I'm just sick of the New England Patriots, and I hope this is the end of the dynasty.
It's gonna be a heck of a game, and right now the Denver Broncos are 4-point favorites, and I'm looking at that, thinking of what Denver did this year, offensively breaking all kinds of records, and to me the 4-point line is just a credit to Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. The fact that it's not higher, I think it's gonna be a ball game. It's gonna come down to one thing, and I hate to say it, but the winner of this game will be determined by the officials. I'm sorry, but it is. You and I both understand that if the New England Patriots can mug the way they want to mug, Denver's going to have a hard time winning this game. Well, the interesting part about it for me, especially from a coaching standpoint, is how is New England going to attack? Yes, I understand we saw LeGarrette Blount put up huge numbers. We saw this rushing game in full force. But we know Bill Belichick and company are very game plan specific, and you also understand a guy like Chris Harris is out. They're scrambling in the secondary in Denver. Do you kick Champ Bailey back outside? Do you leave him in the slot? Ultimately, what do you do? There are so many questions. So, again, I think it's kind of like San Diego. You have to be able to stop the run, obviously, because teams will try to keep the ball out of Peyton Manning's hands. And ultimately, as I said at the top of it, the officiating. Will they be able to mug the Denver receivers? If so, it's going to be a long day for the Denver Broncos. If not, I think Peyton Manning and company will have success. They'll score too many points for the Patriots. You remember the last game was funny. Sean Moreno rushed for over 200-something yards. Yep. Part of that was by design from Bill Belichick. It was kind of weird watching the Broncos rush for over 200-something yards. We'll see if that comes into play again. But, Mark, I'm really looking at the officiating in this game.
No, I couldn't agree more. We've talked about this after the first matchup. The Patriots win 34-31. Denver was up 24-0. Sean Moreno, 37 carries for 224 yards. There are a couple of things that I think New England did that they won't be able to do again. One, they can't give up. They can't get down 24-0.
Right.
And so they can't allow Denver. Basically, they said, y'all go ahead and, Sean Moreno, y'all do anything. Peyton Manning's not going to beat us. We're going to grab these receivers on every single play. Like you were talking about the officiating, and now unapologetic Denver Broncos and Peyton Manning apologist here. Unapologetic apologist. But the fact is, New England is going to, as you mentioned, as Seattle has done all season, get up and press. They're going to hold, grab, yank, pull, and they're going to do whatever they can to disrupt the timing of Peyton Manning and those receivers. I just don't think they're going to be able to. I think it was early in that game that Monty Ball fumbled, And that's one of the things that kept him out of the game. You've got Monty Ball playing well right now. You've got Noshawn Moreno running the ball pretty well for Denver right now. Got a little bit more balance. I don't think that if New England plays the same way, they'll be able to come back and win a game in Denver. Now, this other game was in Foxborough.
Right.
And Peyton Manning, like you mentioned, he didn't have as good a game. Another reason I think that is not only do they grab and hold the receivers, but they do things like letting them run the ball to mess up Peyton Manning's rhythm. Anything to get him out of rhythm, whether it's grabbing the receivers and messing up the timing, or whether it's saying, all right, well, we're gonna make it so easy on you to run the ball, or we're gonna make it so appealing. They don't want to make it easy, obviously. They don't want to give up first downs even, but we're gonna make it so appealing for you to run the football by, just basically backing out of the box, covering all your receivers, and making sure that it's an easy run check that. I think they're trying to mess with Peyton Manning's timing, his rhythm, and his receivers in that way, and I just don't know that it's going to work this time, and it may just be wishful thinking on my part. But New England, they'll come out, they'll be well coached, obviously. They'll have one of the best quarterbacks of all time, so they'll have a shot. I just feel like Peyton Manning in Denver, despite all the injuries, man, Chris Harris going out, it's just another gut shot in a year when you lose all the guys that you've lost, and then we could go through the list. But we won't. But it just seems like Denver's going to find a way to get it done. I hope that it's not just wishful thinking.
And I think the thing about it, and you touched on it already, this is going to be a different game for a lot of reasons than the one we saw in Foxborough. First of all, I don't think New England's going to turn it over all those times early in the game and let Denver get out to a huge lead. I think they're going to have more success throwing the ball. They're not going to have to rush for 200 and something yards. Also, the biggest difference in the game, and this is where I think if you're a Peyton Manning fan, Mark, you have to be concerned because this is something out of your hands. Stephen Ridley and LeGarrette Blount rushed for a combined 27 yards in the first meeting. And I got news for you. Those two are rolling right now. LeGarrette Blount looks like a big-time back. Stephen Ridley, we know he's talented. The Denver run defense did a pretty good job, although Ryan Matthews was hurt and they didn't quite have the dynamic passing game of New England. New England's balance, I think if you're Peyton Manning, you understand you may have to put up some points because right now that New England offense is real hard to deal with.
I want to run through some numbers here real quickly and to his point, make sure you understand exactly what's not going to happen in this game. Rob Gronkowski's not going to have 7 catches for 90 yards on a touchdown because he's not going to play. Brandon Bolden, not going to be the leading rusher for the New England Patriots. They're not going to run for 116 yards in this game, and Tom Brady's probably not going to throw for 344 and 3 touchdowns. Peyton Manning's not going to throw for 150 yards. In this game. Noshawn Moreno's probably not going to throw for or run for he's definitely not going to throw for 224 yards. He's not going to run for it either. And Jacob Tammy's probably not going to be the leading wide receiver for the Denver Broncos. So whatever thoughts you have about last game being similar to it's not going to happen the way that it did last time. I expect a good game. I expect a completely different game. And, although the outcome, it was an overtime game, and, it was obviously a 34-31 close game, good game at the end. 24-0 start for the Denver Broncos. I don't foresee it being the same kind of game that it was last time. And, those numbers we mentioned bear that out.
I agree.
All right, we got to hit a break. We've got a little bit more Arkansas Razorback news right after this break. Chris Ash to Ohio State, who's going to replace him, and then one final look at that miracle finish against Kentucky last night in basketball.
Over 69 years of treating you like family, Peters Family Living's main goal is customer service. That is their promise to their customers. They offer in-house financing on furniture and appliances and a 30-day money-back guarantee. For a friendly, no-pressure atmosphere, visit Peters Family Living today at 201 North Arkansas Avenue, Russellville. Online at petersfamilyliving.com or call 479-968-2929.
Today, there are more than 20 brands of cars being sold in America. So to be noticed, Ford and Cogswell Motors have to go further than anyone thought we could. How does Ford stand out above the crowd? Not just with plug-in vehicles like the new 2013 Ford Fusion Energy that gets a projected 100 miles per gallon equivalent, but also with a line of gas vehicles equipped with the innovative EcoBoost engines combining power and efficiency, plus a full measure of technologically advanced features. We invite you to stop into Cogswell Motors today. We go further than anyone thought we could, so that you can go further too.
RiverValleyLeader.com is the #1 local source for instant news in the River Valley, offering HD video and live streaming along with top-notch coverage of all the news and events around the area. The River Valley Leader is the only place to go for all the information you need. Check out the newest local business featured on the site, as well as police news and coverage from important meetings, along with the personal stories, all at one convenient click. Check out RiverValleyLeader.com.
If you didn't count on KARK4 today this morning,
Here's what you missed.
updated news,
Police continue searching for suspects after a home intrusion overnight.
developing stories,
There's another piece of presidential history turning up here in Arkansas.
and weather and traffic on the force.
Friday night, Saturday morning will bring us our next chance rain.
Every 10 minutes.
Around the clock.
Making your day easier.
So rise and shine and count on.
Count on.
Count on KRK4 today.
Hi folks, Richard Roberts with Cogswell Motors in Russellville. You know, we've been in business since 1949. A dealership doesn't stay in business that long under the same ownership unless you're doing something right, and that's taking care of customers. We have the largest selection of new Ford, Lincoln, Mazda, and pre-owned vehicles in the River Valley. So if you want the most for your trade, the best interest rate on financing, and the best price on a new or pre-owned automobile, come to Russellville and see us. We're at 1900 East Main, or visit us on the web at cogswellmotors.com.
Final segment of a Wednesday on the Sports Blitz. Thank you for joining us in the Cogswell Motors studios with Weldon Braxton and Maddie Lassiter. I'm Mark Freeman. Looking at the Arkansas-Kentucky game from last night, what a finish for the Hogs, moving to 12-4, salvaging a 1-2 start in the SEC Conference this year, and going into Georgia on I guess Saturday in a 12:30 tip there. Weldon, it looked good, and then it looked bad, then it looked good, and then it looked bad, and then Arkansas pulls it off at the end. Long story short, Arkansas has a 3-point lead at the end near the end of regulation, gives up a 3 to one of the Harrison twins near the buzzer, goes to overtime, gets a 3-point lead near the buzzer, gives up another 3 on a second chance to James Young, and then Kai Madden misses a 3. Michael Qualls dunks it back at the buzzer. The Hogs win 87-85 in exciting fashion. Your thoughts on the game? I know there's a whole lot of stuff and a lot of different angles you could go, but your initial thoughts on the game?
Just a back and forth game, Mark, as you mentioned. Kentucky's a really talented team. I guess you want to know what's that stuck out to me. You hear about all the Calipari freshmen. You hear about Randall. You hear about the Harrisons. You hear about Young. But just to watch those guys play, especially play against guys that you watch all the time as far as the Arkansas players, they're as talented as advertised. Now, if that's going to translate into a championship, I'm not ready to say all that. But, Kentucky's talent is one thing that jumped out at me. Give Arkansas credit. From a talent standpoint, they were overmatched. From a skill standpoint, they were overmatched. They were overmatched in a lot of ways. They continued to fight. They continued to hustle. They overcame mistakes, and they were able to win that game. I think it's a credit to Arkansas and Coach Anderson.
I want to talk about the good. I seem to be, like I said earlier, a little pessimistic about stuff, so there's some stuff that I want to point out and ask here in a minute. But pointing out the good things, Bobby Portis, another double-double, 11 points, 10 rebounds, 18 points apiece, leading scorers for Michael Qualls, 2 of them the biggest basket of the entire season so far, and 18 points for Michael Qualls and Kai Madden, who, man, he seems to be the one who, whenever it comes down to time and somebody needs to take a shot, he's the guy who wants to take the shot.
Right.
But I've got a bone to pick anyway here in just a minute. 5 minutes for Anthlon Bell. Don't know what he did to get into the doghouse, but he did. Part of it, he was only 1 for 2 from the field.
Yeah, he's got to make shots, so he can't play.
That's another part of it. Cody Clark had near a double-double, if not a double-double, against Florida the other day. Scores 2 points in 17 minutes and fouls out. So inconsistent, it's not even funny for a guy who I really like to have on the court. When we talked about the 5 guys that we wanted to see on the floor at the end of a game, he was one of the ones that I wanted on the floor because I just really liked what I saw from him early on this season. But 17 minutes and to foul out. I know that Julius Randle and Willie Cauley-Stein were a handful, But, man, and Willie Cauley-Stein fouled out. Julius Randle should have when he turned and elbowed Harris in the face twice. And they didn't call it. But 23 points for James Young, and Julius Randle had 20 points and 14 rebounds, 16 points for Aaron Harrison, and Alex Poitras with 12 to put 4 Wildcats in double figures. There were some things like you mentioned, the talent from Kentucky jumps off the page. The effort from Arkansas's guys really jumped off the page. Obviously, the crowd, man, it really, I mean, there's a reason Arkansas struggles on the road. It's because when they play teams like Kentucky at home and they get that crowd behind them and they can, just feed off of them, they play so much better, and they know they've got a chance. And when they go on the road, sometimes they don't quite pack that effort with them, and it's not for lack of trying. It's just the fact that they just don't have that extra gear on the road that they have at home. But the one question that I want to ask, Will, and I want your thought on it, at the end of the game, you call a timeout, you come out, and there's no set play. It's just freelance one-on-one ISO basketball. Does it drive you, as a basketball purist, does it make you as crazy as it does me?
It was disappointing because normally when you come out of a timeout, you set up to get a very high percentage shot. I mean, just about every time you see it. We're not even talking about at the end of the game. Just throughout the game, when you come out of a timeout,
when you need a basket.
Yeah, normally you get a very good high percentage look. I guess I could tell what they were trying to do. They were trying to draw some attention and get the defense to help out and then leave Portis open for a dunk. But the execution wasn't the best in the world. You mentioned Kai Madden. I think Kai Madden, from a confidence standpoint, it's really good to see the way he's playing, especially shooting the basketball. He's shooting it with confidence. It's just tough because he's not a point guard. That's not a knock against him, but when you call on him to be that type of guy in that situation, you're going to get the results the way you had them. And so I think, for a guy like Kyle, I want to see him continue to play with confidence, continue to shoot it well, but you just wish somebody else would emerge as a primary ball handler. One move I do want to give credit for, it was kind of shaky at the time, was Mardrekus Wade coming in late. His on-ball defense, I really thought, made a difference. He's somebody who's been much maligned. His playing time's been sort of up and down. He came in. I thought his ball pressure was a key to the victory. But the one guy I have to circle, Mark, is a guy who's really struggled the last couple of games. That's Michael Qualls. He was a guy who was the best player on the team probably from the beginning of the year up until this point, scoring inside and out. Thought he did a great job. He was aggressive. He went at Harrison. He drove the paint. He got fouled. He made things happen. He got back on track, quit settling for bad jump shots. Michael Qualls is somebody else I have to give a shout out to, besides his game-ending dunk, obviously.
You need to stop saying that F word. We heard it way too many times last night. 60 fouls in the game last night, and the freaking free throws.
Yeah.
And it's just all night long. 41 free throws attempted for Arkansas, 40 for Kentucky. I went to a game like that early on in the season. It was Clarksville-Bentonville, where there was 80 free throw shot, and it was just unbelievable. And you watch Twitter last night, and you see all the people complaining on both sides, not about the calls that were being made like, oh, we're getting hosed. It was just, please swallow your whistle and let them play. Both of these teams like to get up and down the floor. It was an 87-85 final, but 29 points from the free throw line for Arkansas, 26 for Kentucky. They'd gladly cut those free throws in half, attempts in half, just to be able to run up and down the floor and let those guys play. It was frustrating with the head of officials in the NCAA there in attendance to watch the whistles of Ron Groover, James Breeding, and Roger Ayers just go crazy.
I like how you read those names.
I've looked down there. You got to give those guys their credit if they're going to blow their sticking whistle all night long. I saw somebody tweet that they were on the same plane as Roger Ayers, and he blew a whistle and called a foul on him for blocking the lane and blocking the aisle there in the plane. So, yeah, it was frustrating to watch, and I know that was a sort of an elephant in the room last night for a lot of people watching that game. But it wasn't the prettiest game ever, but the Hogs get a win. Salvage, in a lot of ways, I'm not over-exaggerating when I say they salvaged their season last night. Because now you go to Georgia, and instead of being 0-3, and man, we just had a rough stretch, lost 2 games in a row at home, you get to go to Georgia saying, we just beat Kentucky, we should have beaten Florida, and we're going to come into your house and get a win. The dynamic completely changes.
Well, when you look ahead for Arkansas, I'm gonna borrow a line from Jimmy Dykes, except I'm gonna modify it a little bit, Jimmy, if I can. He said before the game last night, he's like, If you're Arkansas, you can't let Florida beat you twice, which means let that hangover effect impact the way you play against Kentucky. And I would modify that statement coming up to say, don't let Kentucky beat you on Saturday. And what I mean by that, I know they're playing Georgia, not playing Kentucky, but we've talked about this hangover effect. If you're Arkansas, I'm sorry, you got to look at it as we haven't done anything yet. Okay, we've beaten people at home before. We know we can win at home. Whoop-de-doo. We still haven't proven we can beat somebody in their own gym. That is the task before us. As far as I'm concerned, that's the only thing that matters. The Kentucky game, it's over. It's behind us. We have to do something we haven't done in several years, and that's beat somebody in their own gym, not name the Auburn Tigers. If you're Arkansas, you got to have this one circled. You got to do what you have to do to be ready to play this game.
All right, real quickly, we're running out of time. Rob Smith, former defensive coordinator at Rutgers and last year's linebackers coach for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, has emerged by a lot of folks, Football Scoop, tweeting that he's going to be the new defensive coordinator. But Arkansas fans clamoring for Randy Shannon. Lots of reasons for that. They remember him from the U, even though he was there when they weren't that good. And he was the head coach, and they went, but he's been Arkansas's linebackers coach. He's a big name, big recruiting guy down in Florida especially, and he's got a lot of cachet with his name. A lot of people in Arkansas clamoring for him to be the guy, and then crazy names coming about. What are your thoughts about Chris Ash leaving? What are your thoughts on who the next defensive coordinator will be?
Well, we talked about Chris Ash leaving, and we sort of came to the conclusion that Ohio State, from a career standpoint, was a better move. I know you sort of alluded to the fact that maybe he just couldn't cut it here at Arkansas. Maybe that's the case.
I think he just might not have been up for the challenge. I mean,
maybe
not too much of a blast on him, but
I mean, it is what it is. I mean, and I don't necessarily disagree with you. I look at Randy Shannon because he is the name everybody wants. He's the name a lot of people want at Arkansas. I'm not saying he wouldn't be a fit. I'm just stepping back, taking a look at it, saying, first of all, is he going to be a fit with Coach Bielema? Because remember, a coordinator is a glorified assistant coach. That's what you are, which means you have to submit to whatever the head coach wants from a philosophy standpoint, from a play standpoint. You got to make sure that your philosophy matches with the head coach. I don't care if you're Rex Ryan. If your philosophy doesn't fit with Brett Bielema's, that's a problem. First of all, make sure he's the best guy for the job. Admit it, a lot of the Randy Shannon fans out there only see one thing. They see 4- and 5-star players. I don't think people really care if Randy Shannon can coordinate a defense, if he knows coverages or blitzes. They just see him as the meal ticket to South Florida and the meal ticket to 4- and 5-star players. And maybe he is. I'm sure he would help in recruiting. But I just want to make sure, if you're Arkansas, you hire a guy who's capable of it, who's the best fit for the job from a coaching and an X and O standpoint, in addition to being able to recruit.
Well said. We will find out. A lot of folks saying, the experts that I've heard talking about it, saying that, you'll know within days if they're going to promote, obviously, somebody like Randy Shannon, or by the beginning of next week if they're going to do an extensive, exhaustive search and find somebody. But hey, Brett Bielema's got 3 guys at every position that he's got on the list
at all times.
At all times. I wonder where Rory Segrest was on that list. Today's CrossFit Russellville poll question. We'll talk a little bit more about this Friday because I think it's a cool question. Jason Kilburn sent it in. I like it. In light of Qualls' dunk last night that won the game for Arkansas last night, what's the best sports finish you've ever seen live in person? And then maybe you can go to on TV. We got a couple of responses, but I want to let that one fester for a little bit and see what people have to say. I remember Arkansas, Michigan, in I guess it was 2011, was a great finish. Charlie Spakes talks about watching the Iron Bowl on TV, and he said that one can't be topped, which I agree. Yeah. And then he said he was there in Little Rock when Arkansas beat LSU, and he got a high five on the sideline. So that was the best one he's ever been to.
They got 2 dramatic.
In 08.
Oh, okay. That's what
he said. He was on the field behind the end zone. When we caught the TD, he got a high five. So that must have been a really cool thing for him. We'll talk a little bit more about that CrossFit Russellville poll question on Friday, but we've run out of time for today. So for Weldon and Maddie, I'm Mark saying so long. We'll see you at 11 o'clock on Friday with more Sports Blitz.